Hi, I'm Michelle. This is my so-called handmade life. This is the 11 billionth knitting podcast where I talk about knitting, crochet, and anything I feel like, and I ask you questions. And I depend on your answers because it guides where the conversation goes the next week. Today I want to ask you if you are sick of ugly Christmas sweater everything. Because it's November now. I think it's the 1st today. And you've got to make your mind up if you're going to jump on the ugly Christmas sweater train this year, or if you're going to jump off of it as if it were on fire. I read an article in the Times that's a couple of years old about the trend of ugly Christmas sweater parties and the mass of environmental mess it creates. I think at the time they said there were 65 billion ugly Christmas sweaters intentionally designed to be ugly in Britain alone. And the average person under 35 buys one every year and wears it once. And they're mostly made of plastics. So if that's not motivation to knit your own ugly Christmas sweater, I don't know what is. I personally am not really into the ugly Christmas sweater, not normally. And I've never bought one or made one before. I searched for what are the most famous ugly Christmas sweaters in TV, movies, pop culture, and I had a real hard time finding actual examples and articles. And I think that's part of the problem. Most of what I got were pages and pages of sites selling dropship t-shirts, sweatshirts. In fact, it's like AI generated. Basically, any query you type in along with ugly Christmas sweater, you get presented 3 pages worth of sites selling ugly Christmas sweaters, that means sweatshirts, with an image of whatever you typed in. I got so frustrated, I finally typed in ugly Christmas sweaters, spontaneous combustion. And it still gave me a million sites. I mean, the very first one on the list was a sweatshirt with some snowflakes, and it said Santa's logs. Maybe I asked for that. As I searched for actual articles or real lists of what people found to be the ugliest in pop culture, I also just found maybe one article that was rehashed 100 different times by other sites. Anything good is kind of broken up and sold for parts on other sites, but what do you think makes a sweater an ugly Christmas sweater? I'm going to say the first thing is one I just don't agree with, that it's traditional. Maybe folkish or old-fashioned. Like this sweater. I bought this 10 years ago at a thrift store because we were invited to an ugly Christmas sweater party, and my husband had nothing and I had nothing we thought was ugly. That might be in the eye of the beholder, but I got this for him because it wasn't really the style at the time, but I loved it. And knitters know, right? After the party, I wore it, and I still wear it every year. But for me, I had nothing. I just wore my Oh My Bear sweater, which is not ugly. It's glorious. But, I mean, it had ears on the hood, and I thought, people are dumb. It's not the norm, so maybe they'll think it's ugly. Whatever. It was a fun excuse to wear the sweater. But just because something's outdated doesn't make it ugly to me anyway. But definitely the things that were considered ugly when that trend started are very fashionable now, so they don't really count. For instance, Chevy Chase in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, there's this image of him wearing it's like a stranded striped sweater. I think it's really subtle. It's not crazy garish colors, and that is cited as an ugly Christmas sweater, which I think is funny because it's actually really good. There's one that Tim Allen wears in The Santa Claus, which I've never watched, and I'm never going to watch unless I want to torment my husband. Once in a while, I'll act like I want to watch something terrible, and I'll start it and get a little ways in before I let him know I was just doing that to mess with you. We watch a lot of knitting podcasts that way. He doesn't love it. The Santa Claus sweater. It's fine. It has like a traditional snowflake and some mousse and a little bit of this kind of Scandinavian looking patterning, but it's pretty subtle, and it's 2 or 3 colors, and they're all fairly neutral. It's fine. And then, oh, these sites, they pull up this picture of John from Love Actually wearing this fantastic stranded yoke sweater. And they're saying, this is an ugly Christmas sweater. They lie. That is not ugly. So I don't agree with the whole outdated to traditional. One we might agree on, though, is too much patterning. I do think that when someone calls something an ugly Christmas sweater, it typically has a lot of patterns, and the patterning can clash. So whereas this, you see, has quite a bit of negative space on it, I don't think anyone would call this an ugly Christmas sweater now. But if it's patterning all over, and I think especially if it's clashing patterns that don't really go together, that I could get on board with it being ugly. Troy's sweater in Community, that Glee Club episode, there's tons of sweaters worn. That one, I really don't dislike that sweater, but the little center motif that doesn't match the rest of the traditional looking Fair Isle, I don't love it. It's on the edge for me. Alfonso Ribeiro was like the king of sweaters in the 80s on TV. In Fresh Prince, he was always wearing something kind of, you know, uptight. And the sweater makes you uptight, I guess. But there's one Christmas sweater I found of him that, I don't know, I'm on the fence about it too. It's kitschy, it's kind of fun, but there's a lot going on pattern-wise, and there's quite a bit of color there. It's the kind of thing that's like right on the line, and I would kind of find it so much over the top that I would love it. Daryl on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, he wears a mishmash of patterns to observe National Ugly Christmas Sweater Day. And yeah, that one is ugly to me. There's an abundance of primary colors and a lot of what most people consider ugly Christmas sweaters. So you're not, you know, looking at deep jewel tones like burgundies and forest greens. Like this is a forest green. You're looking more at like red, primary red and green, and kind of a clashing. That blue sweater that Betty wears in Ugly Betty, the whole Christmas episode, she has different Christmas sweaters in every scene almost. And she's meant to look fuddy-duddy, kind of grandma-ish. But I don't mind them, except I don't really like that blue one. I just think the colors are too cartoonish. Now the red one she wears is different. But the little snowman, there's a lot going on, but it's small in the center. Which kind of brings me to the next one. A lot of ugly Christmas sweaters that you see, if they're even actually sweaters, they have applique. It's like basically a sweater with something appliqued on top. And I think that's what Betty from Ugly Betty, I think that's what her sweater was. I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I think if it's done well and it's done because you like to sew, I think that could be really cute. But a lot of what I see are just big, garish, applique felt things thrown onto sweaters. Like, I don't like these two from Modern Family. The sweater underneath one is pretty nice, but both, they're just, I don't know. It's sort of mixed media looking, puffy. I don't like it. Like Cameron's Snowman, I don't know why I don't like it, but I like Betty's. Don't know. With all the puffy designs, like anything that jumps out at you, I'm not into 3D sweaters. So like, I guess there was a running joke with Colin Firth's ugly sweaters in the Bridget Jones movie saga. And I guess they all take place in Christmas. I don't know. I don't think I've watched it. My husband swears we watched Bridget Jones, but I've forgotten. I have Google brain. I can't be responsible for remembering things that don't matter like that. But there's one, I'll show you. It's a knitted sweater with a snowman on it, but the scarf is attached to the sweater, but it is a knitted scarf. So, I mean, there's points for all the yarn and actually takes some kind of effort. At least it's actually a sweater. One thing I hate is when I see these sweaters like Santa's Log. These are sweatshirts and t-shirts. I just don't think that counts. Last but not least, the thing that might make it an ugly Christmas sweater, and I might actually like it for this reason, would be the Kitch Factor. I'm still not done with stuff that's kind of out of place and kitschy. And what I consider kitschy has changed over the years. And I found this one picture, and it's truly ugly. It's truly awful, of Ozzy wearing a gremlin Christmas sweater, and yet I kind of like it. One that I did find that wasn't actually a Christmas sweater, but it was listed, was Marshall and Lily's Mousse sweater that his mom made for him in How I Met Your Mother. And I kind of got fixated on it. I thought, you know, that is fun. It was ugly. It's misshapen. It's this lazy chart like of a mousse. It's just like maybe 2 or 3 colors. And I was like, I want that. I want that. It's also very graphic. So I like dug through my stash and I found odd bits of Cascade Eco. Cause like if I'm actually going to make this for Christmas, I have to make it with bulky yarn so I can knit it pretty fast. I looked up, you know, Cascade Eco plus held with something else. It's got to be stashed. I'm not going to buy an ugly Christmas sweater. I don't really care about them. But I kind of got in my head that this is so awful. Like I want to make it, and I really can't make it as awful as it is in the show. In fact, I watched a video on the sweater. The costume designer said they came up with an idea. They wanted it to look kind of homespun and misshapen, and they hired a woman to do duplicate stitching on some Sears sweaters they bought. But there was a misunderstanding and she didn't have them ready in time on the day of filming. And so the staff all got around, the costuming staff, and they just went crazy duplicate stitching. And I bet on the episode you can see where it looks kind of thin and poorly done, the duplicate stitches on Marshall's especially. And I bet you anything that's where they threw it together. And of course, the worse it looked, the better it worked for the plot, which was his mom gave them horrible gifts and they had to wear them and use them in front of her. So anyway, I dug through stash. I found some mishmash of colors, 3 colors I could throw together. And then I drew a childlike drawing of a moose, and I did the laziest charting ever. And I came up with a sweater to knit in pieces. And here's what I have so far. For the front, I'll be releasing the design soon under my new design company, Ugly and Lazy. Yeah, I love it. I really do. You know, this down here is some kind of Cascade yarn that is thicker than the rest. I just love it. And where they had like felt legs appliqued on, I'm just doing this. I'm not going to applique. And rather than it be 2 sweaters where you stand next to each other, the front of the mousse is on one and the behind of the mousse is on the other, I'm just wrapping the mousse around to the back. So there's a pretty big portion that's blank, and then the mousse will wrap around to the back. And I think this is going to be pretty good size-wise. I am really just throwing this together. Like I did a swatch and I picked what I thought would be a nice, easy fit. That way, if it is like this sweater, my husband could actually wear it too if he ever wanted to. I don't care about, I'm never going to go to another ugly Christmas sweater party. I'm sure that is so out of style, but I just did that Intarsia checks Wednesday vest, and here I am right back at it with some more. I just did Intarsia down here, you can see, but then up here I moved into stranded knitting, and I've just got like 7 more rows, maybe 8 more rows of antlers, and then I'll go to the other side. I'm thinking I'm gonna embroider or duplicate stitch some actual Christmas stuff to it, maybe a little wreath or a little forest crown kind of around the moose head. I don't know. That might be too cute, and I might just want to go for something pretty stylized, graphic, and odd. I thought this was so much fun. I don't love How I Met Your Mother. I'm super picky. You're going to find that out. I say that. I just did like an episode of the Gilmore Girls that had over 100 images. I'm clearly not highbrow here, but the laugh track on How I Met Your Mother messes it up for me. The timing is all weird, and I don't know why they did that. But, oh, I hope that's a mosquito. Yeah, I was afraid it was a moth. So yeah, I'm using Cascade Eco and actually 2 different off-white Cascade Ecos. I don't think I have enough for the body. So I have one that's similar. You can't probably tell the difference, but I felt like if they were right next to each other, I would. So I'm going to use the one I have the least amount of for all the ribbing. And if I do a hood on this, which I don't know that I would, but my husband said you should do moose horn hood. If I do that, I will use the off color. Probably. I'll probably need it for that. But I don't think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to make it just a regular crew neck like in the show. I do like a V-neck though. So I don't know. Right now, all my numbers are my own. My chart is my own. If I like riff off of another sweater, I won't tell you all the details of how I did it, but I'll recommend that pattern to you. But I'm going to like make up the chart and I'll print it out somewhere for you if you too want a misshapen moose sweater. But that's been fun. That's like just 2 days of knitting. That's pretty quick. And that includes drawing the chart. It was really rainy one day and I was like, I'm sick of this. I'm just gonna sit down and make this ugly sweater. It kind of is ugly, but I kind of like it for that. So what about you? Have you made an ugly sweater? Can a sweater be ugly? I talked about making your own ugly Christmas sweater. Maybe this year, if you're going to do such a thing, have a Christmas sweater, go to an ugly Christmas sweater party, or you have a family member that will, if you have thought about how this year to do something that's less, I don't know, destructive, like using your hand making as a type of protest or activism. Like, I'm not saying I had such great noble motives for making an ugly moose sweater rather than buying one. I wasn't going to buy one, and I didn't need to make one. But it is kind of fun to have an intentionally strange sweater, unique, that I completely made myself rather than bought. And I wonder if you do that. Is your knitting driven by knitting trends, the stuff you see online? Are you just wanting to have the things that everyone's working on because it looks cool? Sometimes I'm that way. I mean, this doesn't really look cool, but I wanted the thing and I did it. But I think I would not have done it if I was buying a cheap fast fashion thing that I might never wear. I feel very good about doing this because I'm making it with stuff that I have. However, I don't always use eco-friendly yarn. This is eco-friendly, but I don't always. So where do you make a statement with your crafting, I guess, is what I'm asking. Have you, and would you consider making something, knitting something maybe that has a statement, words, a logo on it? Have you been activist with your making ever? I'm just interested to hear about it. Or for you, are you intentionally making the slow way, knowing it's harder, it takes longer, maybe even costs more, so that you can avoid fast fashion sweatshops and exploitation of other people? I would just be interested to hear your thoughts on that. And I'm going to talk a little more about that kind of crafty activism in the next episode, I think. And I'm going to show you my Wednesday vest later.